Now, the president's longtime attorney and one of his closest associates admitted in federal court that Donald Trump directed him to commit a felony in order to help him win an election he very, very narrowly won. Congress is left with the question, what to do with that information. Republicans have the power to open an investigation, of course, into Trump's alleged involvement in breaking campaign finance law, but there's no indication they will do that. Democrats, on the other hand, want to use his opportunity to delay the confirmation process of Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh.
Unquestionably, in my mind, the Kavanaugh hearing should be postponed.
I will be canceling my appointment with Judge Kavanaugh because I choose not to extend a courtesy to this president who is an unindicted co-conspirator.
We should not be, right now, confirming any Supreme Court justice.
The Senate Judiciary Committee should immediately pause the consideration of the Kavanaugh nomination.
Joining me now, Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut. Do you agree with your colleagues there?
I do agree, but of course I would argue that there are lots of reasons that we should be pressing the pause button. We have not been given all of the documents that we need in order to evaluate Kavanaugh's candidacy. There seems to be a reason why Republicans are holding back some of the most important documents from his time in the White House. But clearly there are some really big questions that need to be answered. At the very least, we need Kavanaugh to be open with us about what he thinks about the ability of a president to be indicted and whether he believes that presidents have to answer subpoenas. The most likely question that is going to come to the Supreme Court in the midst of a constitutional crisis would be over an argument as to whether Donald Trump needs to testify before Mueller. Obviously, after yesterday's revelations, it's increasingly unlikely that Trump's lawyers want him to get into a position where he could perjure himself, given the fact that he seems to do it on a regular basis in front of the American people. That question of whether a president has to testify seems to be one that Kavanaugh has to answer. And I would hope Republicans and Democrats would agree he has to answer that question affirmatively before he gets confirmed.
There's a broader question here to me, which is just about the sort of how you take the facts that we're learning and the questions, the sort of profound questions about the president's legitimacy, to be quite frank, and deal with being a member of the Senate. Like, is there a fact pattern at which everything should stop?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important question, Chris, one that I'm grappling with in real time, because, it is somewhat of an arbitrary distinction to say that the Supreme Court hearing process should stop, but the president continues to be able to go on appointing other judges, right, running the armed forces, making all sorts of decisions regarding the U.S. legal system. Ultimately, the founding fathers gave Congress a power. That is the power of impeachment, if they believe that an executive has gotten to the point where he can no longer function. And so I guess I do worry about Congress deciding that the president has lost legitimacy absent a impeachment conversation. Well, we will get a report from Mueller, and when we do, we'll have that conversation. But before that, I think it's a difficult thing to decide.
Let me just ask you this. There are people who say, and I think they have a decent argument, that what was sworn to in federal court yesterday and seems to be endorsed by the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District is itself an impeachable offense. The president directing his underling to commit a federal crime in furtherance of covering up something so that he can be elected. Are they right?
Well, I think it's important for us to have in front of us the evidence that leads the prosecutor to that decision. Right now, we have Cohen's testimony, but we also may have other evidence, whether it be documents or audio tapes to that effect as well. And so I think the reason why some of us are, punting on this question a little bit today is because, we take the indictment at face value. We also think that we need all of the evidence before us.
You're also punting on it because you're worried about the politics. I mean, isn't that the subtext here?
Well, I think there's a good reason for why we have wanted Mueller to provide us with a report, because when you consider something as serious as impeachment, you want to have all of the facts in front of you. Republicans are wrong to say that just because this didn't indict him on the Russia question, it's not serious. But I do think that it's important for us to have all of the facts in front of us. And I think Mueller, frankly, Chris, has to think at this point about giving us some preliminary findings. I mean, there's nothing that stops Mueller from saying, here's what I know right now, and I'm going to continue to work on other things, and then we can assess that preliminary report.
I haven't heard anyone call for that, but from a transparency standpoint, I'm a journalist, like that, with all of us operating with some big thing in a black box that we can't see, just seems almost maddening at this point, because there's a subset of facts that are extremely important to know what happened one way or the other.
Right. Yeah, and listen, there's nothing in the statute underlying Mueller's work that requires him to wait until the finality of his process to give us some information. And I think what happened yesterday probably compels him to show some cards, not all, but to show some cards, to the extent that there, is going to be a conversation about what the proper redress is before Congress. And I think that need will increase because, as we were talking about, it's going to be, I think, really hard for Congress to decide what functions of the executive are legitimate going forward and what are illegitimate.
The president tweeted this morning about Paul Manafort some extremely kind words. Feel very badly for Paul Manafort and his wonderful family. Justice took a 12-year-old tax case, among other things, applied tremendous pressure on him, and unlike Michael Cohen, he refused to make up stories in order to get a deal. Such respect for a brave man. Many people interpreted that as dangling a pardon. What signals have to be sent from your colleagues on Congress to the president that a pardon for Manafort is a red line?
So I think Republicans need to say to Trump effectively what they said on the Mueller investigation. Republicans gave some pretty clear signals to Trump about 6 months ago that the red line was the firing of Mueller. And I think that's in part why Mueller's investigation still proceeds. They've got to say the same thing about a pardon to Manafort. And of course, I think that tweet makes it very clear to everyone what the reason for that pardon would be. Manafort's success in refusing to cooperate. He effectively admitted in that tweet why he would pardon him. So I haven't heard that definitively from Republicans today. And I think what we know is that unless Republicans draw that line, then Trump is going to take advantage of it.
All right, Senator Chris Murphy, thanks for making some time tonight.
Thanks.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.